Fellow cigar lovers, welcome to our next installment on our YouTube videos. Today we're a little different. I know you've seen myself and of course my father on several of Kirby's wonderful videos, and of course on one of ours celebrating our 40th anniversary a couple of years ago. But it had been some time since I'd managed to entice my father to sit next to me and chew the fat, enjoy a cigar together, chat, and enjoy something a little special on the spirit side. So, not that he needs any introduction, but Dad, welcome.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and thank you, lovely viewers, for watching it. Eddie has invited me to join him tonight, and I couldn't say no, especially with this lovely bottle, which Eddie will explain what it is, but it's one of my favorites, and a beautiful, delicious cigar as well. So it's a pleasure to be here with you, Eddie. Thank you for asking me to be present with you.
The pleasure is all mine, and I have learned one thing over these many years of knowing you, Dad, that if I want to catch the best possible version of your good nature, then I should not delay offering you a cigar. So, before I say anything else, Dad, could I, at the very least, cut your cigar?
Actually,
and then
you may.
Let you light it for us?
But I want a straight cut, no V-cut, please. Yes.
Okay, agreed. There we are.
Eddie's favorite cut is a V-cut, but my favorite cut is a straight guillotine cut.
There
Especially
we are.
with a cigar of this size. It's beautiful.
So just for our viewers to know, we're enjoying, it's not the first time, the 40th anniversary Davidoff Panatello, or number 2, that was made to celebrate the shop's 40th anniversary in 1980. The reason we're smoking it is of course partly nostalgic. Here we are talking father to son again, but also because we like to keep an eye on its development. When we agreed the blend with Davidoff, and this is going back 5 years now, we very consciously picked a cigar that was stronger than our normal, call it palate, but with a view to the future and how it would age and develop. So, without further ado, I shall light mine. And I'd like to take perhaps this initial moment to just talk a little bit about the spirit I have sitting between my father and I. For the eagle-eyed viewers, you might notice that it's Discarded is the name. And this is all thanks to a very fortuitous meeting, a gentleman called Jason, who proceeded to explain to me some wonderful, very pertinent information to my father and I about his son, who was turning 18, Ryu, and what a fan he was of our YouTube content. So, fast forward a few months, and I've managed to meet Jason and Ryu in person. And they came with a bag in their hand, and inside this bag was this extraordinary bottle. It's called Discarded Banana Peel, rum with banana peel. For those of you who are interested, it's 37.5% ABV. Now, they had seen one of my clips where I mention how much I enjoy eating a banana before I have a cigar. It just does something magical on my palate. And also that we love rum, both my father and I. So this company does something extraordinary. They take Caribbean rum, in this case I believe it's Barbadian, and or maybe Bayan, I'm not sure, and they flavor it with old discarded banana peels that have been used by a different company as part of their production, and it would be something that would be thrown away otherwise. And as you can see, we're halfway through the bottle already.
Not today.
Not today.
Not today.
We should add. And it's an extraordinary drink. So I would like to raise a glass, and I think my father would like to do the same, and toast Jason and his son Ryu for introducing us to this amazing rum.
Jason
Thank you very
and
much.
Rio, to your good health.
Thank that, and yours. Get nuts. It's really Moorish. If you like
Really
banana,
magical.
even if you don't, it goes down so well. No?
Beautiful. As you know, I love bananas.
Mm-hmm.
A banana split is probably one of my favorite desserts. And I could just imagine myself pouring this over a nice banana split with some delicious ice cream.
Dad, I hope
My
you.
mouth is already watering, Eddie.
Well, I hope you won't mind me telling the viewers your discerning eye and your exacting palate do not end with cigars. They continue on with really anything my father enjoys and cultivates, any pleasures he takes through his life. And one of those is bananas. And you have not gone banana shopping until you've been with my father at Marks and Spencer and watched him ravage the banana selection, individually tearing off bananas from different bunches to maximize the perfect selection of bananas that he then acquires and proudly brings back to the shop. I'm always lucky. I always get one or two of his bananas
Well,
myself.
it has to be a certain size to start with.
So what
Yes.
is your criteria for selecting the perfect banana?
I don't like the smaller size bananas. A banana should be at least a good 7-8 inches long, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
And at the right ring gauge, about 110, 120 ring gauge.
And what about its consistency? Does it need to be a very mature, ripe banana, or
No, not really.
or green?
Not very green, but in the process of yellow and green. Once it gets more yellow and it starts having those brown spots on it, and I put it in the fridge. My favorite way of eating a banana is out of the fridge. It has to be cold. And if you open my fridge, there's always a stack of good 5, 6, 7 bananas being frosted and ready to be consumed. I love it. My day starts with a nice banana. Sometimes a banana and a cigar as well.
Well, it's quite surreal. In France, my parents spend time there. They have a refrigerator that stores my father's cigars when he's not present for an extended period of time in the humidor. So the humidor with the cigars goes into the fridge. I wouldn't recommend that, by the way, if you have very expensive wooden humidors, but for the acrylic style humidors we use.
Well, the Xeno humidors,
They're
beautiful.
perfect for
the
it.
plastic Xeno humidors, they're ideal for that purpose.
And of course, you open the fridge and there you have your cigars, you have your bananas waiting to be enjoyed. So that's
I think this will be another addition to that.
I think so.
I could imagine this being kept in a fridge or even a freezer. I've never tried putting a rum into the freezer, but this one is definitely worth a try. It will not freeze. It will get very cold, very much like limoncello or even vodka, and then consume it there. It's a little project for this weekend, Eddie.
I'm going to make a note and I'm going to speak to this company, Discarded, and see if they could do some ice lollies for you.
Ooh.
So, Dad, what is your first thoughts on the 40th anniversary?
Well, as everybody knows, the 40th anniversary, we were both very much involved in the blending of it, and it's a delicious blend. And funny enough, every time I smoke this, it just gets better and better. It tastes more delicious. The pairing of that with rum, I always tell people who ask me, what should I drink with my cigar? My first response is, my favorite is rum in the summer and possibly port in the winter.
Oh, yes.
But rum and cigars is a beautiful blend. The sweetness of a rum just really blends in beautifully with the cigar. And now the sweetness of the rum and the flavor of the banana is just magical. The only thing that's missing is perhaps a scoop of vanilla ice cream on top of it, and I could eat it rather than smoke it.
I like the sound of that. So, well, this cigar always takes me back in time as well, not just to when we were working on the project together, 5, 6 years ago, but of course to the beginning. And I know we've had many opportunities to share with viewers your recollections and your thoughts, perhaps, behind what you did and what you're doing and what you've done with this extraordinary shop and business. I have a sort of a variation on the question, perhaps, Dad, which I don't know if you've ever directly answered. If you could travel in time, let's suspend all rules of physics and laws of the universe. If you could travel back in time as you are today and meet the, let's say, 18-year-old maybe, or even 20-year-old Edward back in Iran, and share some advice. Tell him some things about things that maybe at the time you didn't appreciate, but you do now as you look back, for him to do differently maybe, or just to be more aware of. What advice would you share with him?
Nothing much more different than what I did, actually. In the back of my mind, I always had it for everything, even for school, for life. There was always a plan B, plan C. What if directions change? What if something else happens? I would have probably told them, don't waste too much time, go straight to the Davidoff shop and have a good long chat with Mr. Zino Davidoff himself. But nothing that comes to me. I don't have any regrets of that time.
Yes.
I don't have any regrets, to be honest. I'm quite content in life. And life could have been more different, could have been more aggressive, more adventurous in life. But to me, as long as I had my cigars, my family, my wife, your mom next to me, I was happy. And now it's the same, plus the addition of the grandchildren, which makes it even more beautiful.
So that's remarkable, because my own recollection and observations when we were much younger, particularly because I used to often sit in the back of the car with you and experience your driving, it always seemed that you were a little more aggressive, a little more impatient, a little less understanding of other drivers and their, let's call it, eccentricities. And, road rage is not the right word. I don't think you suffered from road rage, but you were certainly a scary person to sort of cross on the road.
Aggressive driver, perhaps.
Yes, yeah, that's right. But I think that also must have spoken to something about what was inside you as well. Maybe that's just the way you had to drive if you were in Iran. Maybe that was a follow-up of that. But when I see you today, not specifically with driving, but just how you conduct yourself, the patience that you bring to everything, the careful thought behind it, and the consideration of other people, call it consequences, but especially how those things might affect other people. You're so well balanced on that. So at what point do you think, was there a point where that sort of impatience and verve mellowed out a little bit?
Well, it didn't mellow out, Eddie. It's exactly what the old saying is, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Mm-hmm. When you're driving in a country like Iran, everybody's driving crazy. If you try to be polite, you will be the last car in any traffic. So you do have to make your own space. I remember there was a little booklet I used to read in those days, at the age of 18, 19, and it gave all sorts of short stories. And one of the stories was the guy saying that the rule of driving is always leave space from the car in front of you, about 5 or 4 or 3 cars space. He said, but every time I do that, I see another car in front of me. So you never left that space, you know. You drove right
So
up to the bumper so the others don't take your place. When did it change? When I came to London and started driving here. And I remember the first time I drove in London, I hired a car in Queensgate. There was a car, they were hiring a small Fiat, and I got into the car. It was an experience being a left-hand driver on the right-hand side, and I just looked to my right, and I was trying to come out of the parking. I gently banged onto the car in front of me. I'd forgotten that the rest of the car is on the left rather than on the right. But once you're on the streets, I was amazed. I still am, although it has changed here in London, but the politeness you get from most drivers, and from taxi drivers as well, funny enough. In the middle of the worst traffic, if you try to make a right turn or a left turn, and if you remember to put the indicator on and perhaps give a gentle, polite look, they will stop and let you go. And I do that as well, as you very well know. To be honest, the difference between giving way to other cars and not giving way is a few seconds, maybe no more than 1 or 2 minutes in the total of your journey. But it makes life so much more comfortable, pleasant, and enjoyable to drive. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, when did this all happen? I think when I moved to London, my attitude moved and changed with it. In Rome, I was doing like the Romans do, and in London, I was driving like the English do.
That's a wonderful answer, Dad.
But remember that, huh?
I will. You know, I think, half joking, half seriously, you should write a book of wisdom, preferably in Twitter length, so that each phrase can be easily memorized by your grandchildren. It's too late for your children.
I don't need to write a word of wisdom. I've told you many times. All you have to do is remember. All you have to do, if you do the opposite of what the unwise people do, you will be the wise one. It's as simple as that. If they do something that you don't enjoy, you do exactly the opposite.
That's really well said. And as retailers, we've talked about this frequently, and I hope you don't take it all to your head, Dad. There's very little I can say that others have not already said about you, but you know, I'm very lucky to learn from, I think, the best retailer I've ever come across, which is you. And that view is easy to hold when I'm young because I'm your son, but it's been tested many, many, many times. And I have never, ever, ever seen or experienced the kind of service that you naturally place upon each and every one of your customers when you deal with them. And that's really a lesson for me. And in recent years, it's become even more of a lesson because I've seen so many other retailers make mistakes, perhaps, or move in a direction that seems unnecessarily complicated. I don't want to give specific names, but certain luxury retailers today, certainly in the more fashionable areas, seem to treat the customer as if they are a crazy, mad consumer who is there purely to throw money at them and acquire things that they don't deserve to buy. And like it or not, that attitude filters down through into the the people who are looking after those customers. I've been on the receiving end of that myself. And I've walked away exactly as you've taught me and said, here's a checklist of all the things I hope I never do in my shop. And if I ever see anyone being treated that way in my shop, I won't. And I think this is really something for our viewers as well. I'm sure all of you have different experiences of retail, better and for worse. If I could say one thing, and I'm guilty of it as well, is not to just let it pass by and walk out and move on. Nor do I recommend resorting to social media, which is such a passive-aggressive way of affecting a business. I think it's to say something there and then, just politely, of course, but to let them know that what they're doing is wrong and for what reason, or it upsets you. Some may not care, but I promise you, if you are talking to a good retailer, they will take it to heart. They will not sleep that night, and they will wake up the next morning and try and resolve that. That's certainly the way we behave. And it's on us to remind all these businesses, post-COVID especially, that there is still a customer and that our fundamental role is the customer satisfaction. It's the service that we provide. It is not a right that a customer walks into our business. It's a privilege and an honor, and we should treat the customer like that at all times. Off my soapbox now, I promise.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I have to be honest with you. And nobody's perfect. None of us are ever perfect. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from our mistakes. The first time you make the mistake, it's a lesson. It's an expensive lesson sometimes. Sometimes it's a cheap lesson. But it is definitely a lesson. You learn from that. If the second time you do the same mistake, then it's foolishness. And you've got no other people to blame but yourself. So here's another one for your book.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dad. And I have to say the cigar is developing as well as I remember it, if not better. Almost as well as your advice, Dad. It's aging very well.
I have to say this is complimenting the cigar very well.
It is.
Why aren't you drinking your drink?
I am, but you know, I don't want to appear greedy, so I'm sipping mine. It's a question I get asked frequently now, and I'd love your opinion on this, Dad, because you are right in the thick of the last significant cigar boom that I remember, which was in the 90s. You know, triggered really by Cigar Aficionado, the rise of Cigar Aficionado in the US.
Absolutely.
And it sort of coalesced into so many people, I don't want to say coming out of the closet with their cigar habit, but certainly coming forward and being proud.
Not being embarrassed about smoking cigar.
Very well put.
Yeah.
Not being embarrassed and saying, I'm enjoying a legal and beautiful experience and putting it out there. And that, of course, created a very unusual market as well. And you were there watching on the supply side what happened in Cuba, what happened with non-Cuban producers, and then seeing the demand on the other side and the desperation in some cases for customers and for retailers to try and get their hands on cigars. And some of the, let's call it perhaps missteps with historic reference to how that demand was dealt with, where perhaps quality was not optimized at all times and more volume was allowed to drift into the market than it should have. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial there.
No, that's absolutely true.
But this time around,
quality was compromised then.
yes. And also, I think we didn't have the depth and breadth of market that we have in terms of producers and origins. This time around, and I hesitate to call this a cigar boom. I think it's a little deeper than that. But certainly post-COVID, we have seen, and a little bit before COVID, we have seen an amazing interest and growth in people enjoying cigars. Not cigarettes, not what I call the fast tobacco variety of tobacco, but the beautiful, crafted, handmade, long filler type of cigars. What do you see when you compare today's market to that market, what differences do you see? And does that give you cause for optimism or cause for concern? What is your observation of the playing field today?
Well, I see two things. What happened it was in 1995, 96, 97, which, as you refer to as the cigar boom. Our friends in Cuba, then it was Mr. Padron in charge of Habanos, and his response for the big demand was to make more cigars. And he, at that time, the story is all printed there, he had promised Fidel that he will produce 200 million cigars, which he did touch 200 million cigars. I think it was in 96 or 97.
Now, to be clear, that's handmade long filler cigars?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. No cigarillos, nothing like that. But that was done at the cost of the quality.
Mm.
The difference nowadays is there is again a shortage of Havana cigars, and the Cubans have learned and have remembered what happened then. Therefore, if they don't have the cigars, they're not going to rush into making the cigars. That's why half of the shelves are empty with Cuban cigars.
Mm.
They said, we don't have it, we're going to grow the tobacco properly, we're going to ferment it properly, and we're going to produce it properly. You just have to wait. The other big difference is, in those days, there was no other source of cigars. I mean, in those days, nobody had heard about, the Dominican Republic was just starting to produce cigars. Davidoff had just gone there. I would say 80% of cigar smokers had not even experienced smoking in non-Cuban cigars. Nowadays, several things have changed. In the last 25, 30 years, the Dominican Republic, in the last 10 to 15 years, Nicaragua, Honduras, even places like Mexico, they have started to produce, to grow and produce and to make and manufacture some beautiful cigars.
Let's not forget Ecuador and Peru as well, which we had the pleasure of tasting.
That is very recently.
Yes.
Very recently. It's only in the last few years. We enjoyed a lovely cigar from Peru the other night. I was surprised. I was very much surprised.
Beautiful smoke.
And now there's an alternative. And because of the shortages on the Cuban side, it's giving an opportunity for the cigar lovers in the world to experiment these cigars.
Mm.
I mean, ourselves, how many non-Cuban cigars we smoke during the day?
Yes.
For various reasons, for pleasure, for tasting, for testing, for trying. And, you know, there are some lovely cigars. There are one or two disappointments as well, but you get that everywhere. That is the big difference. And there's a big demand. I think the demand for cigars generally worldwide has increased a lot. I was just reading some statistics in America. I think last year they had imported something in the region of 400 to 450 million cigars from the Caribbean. About 300 million of that was from Dominican Republic, and about 150 million, and possibly a bit more, from Nicaragua. And
Amazing.
Nicaragua has started from zero, and it's reached 150 million cigars.
Extraordinary.
There are more people enjoying cigars. The majority of cigar smokers are younger ones. These are people who, well, I'm delighted to see this. They realize that they have discovered the pleasures of life. The pleasures of life is not going raving until 5 in the morning.
Well, it depends how old you are.
A lot of people, I've been talking to our customers, the amount of youngsters they come here in their early 20s, mid 20s, and they all ask us, I want to buy a cigar. I've never smoked one, but I'm going out with some friends. We're going to have a nice meal in such and such a place, and I'd like to smoke a cigar. And my next question is, what are you going to drink with it? And said, well, I haven't thought about that. What should I drink with it? You know, they're trying and starting to enjoy the finer things of life. As right in the beginning, when you mentioned, you know, this bottle came from our chatting and talking with a young man who was 18 or 19.
Just turned 18.
Just turned
Yeah.
18. And he's enjoying the pleasures of life. And that's how it should be. I'm delighted to see this. I didn't think we will ever see this. And I'm delighted to see that as you know, our sales of cigarettes has really dropped to nominal 0 point something percent. The cigar sales are increasing, which means the people are enjoying the good things in life, or as Davidoff would say, the good life. I always remember what Dr. Schneider used to say, smoke less, but smoke the best, smoke Davidoff.
Yeah.
These are the major differences I'm seeing. And with time, you will see it as well. It will continue because you cannot ever stop people from having pleasure. You cannot ever put value on pleasure. To every person, pleasure has a certain meaning and certain value. For those who have a lot, pleasure is buying a new jumbo jet for themselves. For many of us, pleasure is buying a nice cigar and smoking it in good company. Whatever your ability financially is, you try to get the best of that and enjoy it. Pleasure is the most important thing in life. And it does not need to be a crazy thing. It doesn't need to be jumping up and down with loud music, 5 in the morning, or smoking anything rubbish.
Well, that reminds me of I'm paraphrasing, I forget who it was, but, you know, describing two states of life. One is to live, i.e. to be alive, or to live to enjoy life. And they're two very different ways of being on this earth. And some of it is, of course, good fortune. If you're lucky enough to have the privileges of a good life when you're young, that's wonderful. But it's also a mindset, I think, and it's seeing that life has a lot of ups and downs, and trying to remember the ups and trying to forget the downs, so that the taste in your mouth is sweet. I can't think of a better way to put it. It's not always easy to do. There's so many challenges that we face in our lives that challenge that, but it makes such a difference to our view of what our life has been when we can look at it mostly and say, I remember the pleasures.
In everybody's life, in our life, we had wonderful moments and we had very unpleasant moments. We had problems, we had difficulties. The important thing is to stand up to it, face it, fight it, and you will overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
You will always have difficulties. And when I was just starting the business, opened the shop, I used to have sleepless nights. You know, where am I headed? You know, what could happen? But and then with time, with experience, with patience, patience is the most important thing. The most important thing in life is time. Time resolves so many problems that nothing else can resolve. With time, the tallest and the hardest mountains could turn into sand and dissolve themselves. You know, you just need to have patience and time. And a long life.
Well, hopefully
which you will have if you continue smoking cigars and cigars only.
Thank you, Dad. I hope so. And of course, reasons to enjoy that life. You're absolutely right. I have to say there is a few subjects we are going to cover in upcoming episodes, which we will not cover today, but I have not forgotten some of the comments we have seen. There will be shortly dare I say it, a masterclass on these amazing umbrellas behind me. so many of you have commented on them and what the story is. Well, I promise you that's coming soon. And I hope we will satisfy your curiosity with that. There's also a huge portfolio of cigars we have never previously sold as a shop, which again you have asked for, and I will sit down one day, I hope with you, Dad, and we will look at these new cigars and talk them through, see if they're cigars that appeal to you as well. And I have to say, for me, the most precious part of what we're doing on social media, I promise it's not
you.
Well, you too, Dad. But the advantage that social media has given us today is to of course, share these moments with friends and people who are interested in what we do and smoke. But it also gives me an opportunity to grab you. You're always available, but to grab you, pin you down in front of the camera so you can't avoid it.
You could grab me anytime you want to, Eddie. For you, I'll do anything. You know that.
Well, thank you, Dad. It means the world to me, and it means more to me as every day goes past. So that's been the boom, I think. And I imagine in years to come, if not myself, our children, your grandchildren will be able to enjoy this content as well. Probably in a different way to how we intended it. And long may that continue.
One day Elvis will be asking you the same questions.
Elvis and Stella, by the looks of things.
Yes.
But at this point, I just want to say, Dad, thank you so much for spending some of your precious dinner time with me this evening. Thank you, Jason and Ryu, for this wonderful rum that you've introduced us to. And most importantly, thank you to all our viewers, each and every one of you that enjoys the content, but also takes the extraordinary trouble and effort to come and visit us. And we have been so touched and amazed that some of these videos that have gone out there have brought new friends to our store. And it doesn't have to be a cigar smoker, just someone who appreciates some of the qualities of life. So thank you, all of you, and each and every one of you. May you have a rich, happy, fulfilled life, and I look forward to meeting many more of you in years to come.
Thank you.
On that note, to your very good health, and inshallah, lots of cigars.
And a big thank you from me for your time, for watching this video and the videos that Eddie will continue to make. I hope you enjoy them. And just let Eddie know if there's anything in particular you would like him to ask me, and I'm sure he will. Cheers to good health.
Cheers.
By the way, I took your run.
Oh, thanks a lot. I thought so.